Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, a fairly rural town in the middle of England. Here. Of course, it's grown a lot since his day, expanding into a true city, as you see here. The house he was born in still stands, though it has been repaired and repainted and fixed up so many times that arguably it's not the same house. We're not quite sure when he was born, although we're pretty sure it was in April, based on parish records, and we're definitely sure it was in 1564. To tell you the truth, we could fill a book with the things we don't know about him. He had seven siblings, 2 of which were older. He was the oldest surviving son. It wasn't unusual in those days for people to die as babies or children. As the oldest son, he was well educated. He was also very well read, including many classical stories and things translated from Italian. That's going to be important when we start really getting into Romeo and Juliet. When he was 18, he married Anne Hathaway. No, not that one. When she was 26. Yes, he was 18, she was 26. You heard that correctly. Susanna, their first child, was born 6 months later. Take from that what you will. 2 years later, they had twins, Judith and Hamnet. That should probably sound familiar. However, Hamnet died when he was 11. So, that play about fathers and sons titled Hamlet, gee, wonder where that came from. We lose track of Shakespeare for a few years here. Scholars refer to 1585 to 1592 as Shakespeare's lost years because we have no idea where he was or what he was doing in this time. There are a lot of stories, including traveling the world. They say he couldn't have written Hamlet without having been to the castle in Denmark. He knew things about it that he should not have known. It's possible he also went to Italy. His knowledge of Italian political life and geography was strong enough that it's possible he had been there. My favorite story, however, is the fact that some people swear he was in fact on the run from the law for deer poaching, of all things. By 1592, though, he was definitely in London. We know that for sure. He was definitely writing plays, because this 1592 is the year that his first work is performed. He was probably acting. You didn't generally just do one or the other in those days. And he was definitely starting to get famous. And incredibly wealthy. If you were good at what you did, if you were a good playwright and a good actor, you could be fairly wealthy, particularly when you come from a podunk town. He was rich enough to buy the second best house in Stratford-upon-Avon. Please note that it was not the best house. I would show you a picture, except some noblemen tore it down in 1759 rather than pay taxes on it. How we would all like to go back in time and beat him for it. It used to be here, though, and that crazy-looking tree there in the middle is where a tree that he planted used to be, but the noblemen tore that tree down too. Tradition says he retired back to Stratford-upon-Avon some years before his death, but this is probably only partly true. He probably divided his time between Stratford and London. You didn't retire in those days. He died April 23rd, 1616. We know this for sure. That is the reason most people assume his birthday is also April 23rd, because that makes sense, right? He's buried in Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon. Go home to be buried. And the sign on his grave, since I'm sure you can't read it with all of the glare in my photograph, says, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones." Creepy, yes. Apparently it worked, because they redid in almost the entire church, but they did not disturb where Shakespeare was buried. One more thing, just FYI. He wrote 38 plays. Probably. There are a few that we're not actually positive are his, and a few that are claimed to be by someone else that might actually be his. 154 sonnet, that's a solid number, we know that for sure. And some other poems. 2 we have years for and know are his, and 2 that are attributed to him, but we don't really have any idea if he actually wrote, and probably 4 others. Come in tomorrow expecting to do something a little bit crazy. And be prepared to learn all kinds of things you didn't want to know about Elizabethan England. I'll see you tomorrow.